tuning in today, everyone. I just want to let you know my book is out and available on Amazon and Barnes& Noble. The name is Parents, Our Greatest Teachers. And now, back to our episode. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Alex Balgood, and this is Leap of Health. Today, we have Elizabeth Neat. She is a chronic pain specialist, yoga-informed addiction recovery coach. She also does ancestral healing. She's a practitioner, yoga and meditation teacher, and international bestseller author of The Way Through Chronic Pain, tools to reclaim your healing power. She focuses on helping people realize the power of their inherent healing. So welcome, Elizabeth. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks so much, Alex. It's my pleasure to be here. I appreciate it.
Yes, no, thank you for giving me the opportunity and my audience to learn a little bit more about ancestral healing. But before that, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got to be a practitioner for this very specific topic.
Oh, very good. Yes, I had an accident when I was 14. I fell off a horse and broke the fifth lumbar in the base of my spine. And I had to have a lot of surgery. I kind of got up from that accident and walked, and I didn't realize how much I'd hurt my back. Anyway, fast forward 14 years later, that break, because the bone broke from front to back, and the front part slipped forward, so it was pulling the leg nerves with it. And about 14 years later, the doctors were like, I had an awful lot of pain. And the doctors said, oh, you have an instability there and we need a fusion. But it took 3 fusions and a reconstructive kind of surgery with a bunch of hardware to make for it to work. And I, in the process, ended up on a lot of pain medication, opiates and benzodiazepines, which is an anti-anxiety medicine. And all of that, my pain just got worse and worse through all of that. Anyway, I was on that medication and a lot of pain for 32 years, and finally found a doctor that really understood the nature of chronic pain at that point, and had another solution. Everyone else up until then was like, oh, you have to live with this. This is chronic pain, and chronic pain you have to live with for the rest of your life. And here are your opiates and benzos. Right? That was there. Anyway, I knew there was another answer. It just took me a long time to find it. And anyway, I found a doctor. I went into his pain management program, and part of he helped me get off the medication, but it wasn't about the medication. It was like the doctors up until then, they never asked the question, why isn't Elizabeth healing? They just assumed I wouldn't. Right. And so this doctor understood that the body wants to heal and that there was something in the way of the healing. And he went right to the root. Well, in his program, there was a man named John Newton, who's runs healthbeyondbelief.com. And he's an ancestral clearing practitioner. And this is his trademark registered process that I was experienced. And I was so impressed with it. I went out and took the first training I could to become a practitioner. That process really helps to get underneath the root of the problem. And it wasn't the only thing. Ancestral clearing wasn't the only modality that we used in that pain management program, but it was a really important one. So I just want to say the doctor that ran that program, his name is Dr. Peter Prescott. He passed away a few years ago, but he left this book, Conquer Chronic Pain, an Innovative Mind-Body Approach, which is an amazing, very helpful book about chronic pain. And then I wrote the I wrote kind of the companion to that, The Way Through Chronic Pain, Tools to Reclaim Your Healing Power, which is kind of the patient version of that. It's kind of like, I went through his program. I talked about the tools that I learned, how I used them, and so forth. So, and included in the book is a write-up on ancestral clearing.
That is amazing. I actually, I've been working for spine surgeons for about so long now. I think now like about 18 years. And so I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, spinal surgeries on their own, they're so traumatic for the body. And a lot of patients, they end up in pain all the time. And I do see it in my office how they're always they're in pain. So when you're in pain, you want medicine that's gonna stop that pain, because sometimes it really interferes with the body. But in a lot of cases, like you said, some doctors, I'm not saying all, but some doctors will just prescribe you medicine as opposed to just try to find out the root of the problem. What is it really causing that pain? So that was really cool that you mentioned that. And so how does ancestral healing works?
Right. So it's a process that works on the epigenetic level. Which is kind of like that's kind of a big word for people. If you think of genes, genetic information, the DNA as hardwiring, like the hardware for your computer, and the epigenetic on the gene being the software on your computer. And in terms of the human body, at the epigenetic level, they're on off switches, just like when you hit a keystroke on a computer, it's an on or off. It's off unless you press it, and then it turns on. So that's just the easiest way that I can explain it to an audience, that way, kind of how it works. Now, I can't. We do have a practitioner that did a PhD and included this work. It was a PhD in consciousness and modalities we heal in the field of consciousness in the present moment. And she did a dissertation on that, and she brought in the work. But what I'm hoping for someday is that we find like we're able to identify like a blood marker or a genetic change before the ancestral clearing, and then see the change after. That's what I'd like to do, because I have a science background, and when I experienced this, I was not prepared for this process. I had no idea what was coming. I was open, but I was also really sick. I was in this pain management program, and I'm sidestepping your question to give some background. I was detoxing, and so I was very weak, and I was in a room full of 20 other patients just like me who were on chronic pain, who were chronic pain patients as well. They called us hickory nut cases because we were cases no other doctors could crack, right, around the pain. And they were getting us off the medicine, and then Dr. Peter Prescott and John Newton were taking us through this program to kind of help us, really rewire our behaviors around pain, mind, body, and spirit. And I knew about that because I have a yoga background. I knew about Sanskrit words as power words. I knew about those. A sound in Sanskrit, a word in Sanskrit is a sound that, and the sound means the essence of the thing you're talking about. So the word in Sanskrit for dog would be the sound for dogness, right? And I knew about that because I had experienced that, but I didn't know about English. I didn't understand about English words being, it's all vibration. It's just depending on what vibration are you at. I'm just telling you where I was mentally, awareness wise, when I had first experienced this process. So anyway, John walks in and he asks everybody what our pain level is, and everybody's from 0 to 10 on a 0 to 10 scale, and everybody's pain was 8 to 20, right?
Wow.
Okay, and mine was an 8, and then he handed out this piece of paper, and it had English on it, and he said, he didn't even have his, it was basically a prayer. And I don't want everybody to, like, don't turn away from my discussion here. Don't let that turn you off. I saw what it was and kind of overall, and I didn't think anything of it. I just did what I was told, right? He says, read it silently. We didn't even read it out loud. Read it silently. So I start reading it silently. I get halfway, it's a full page, right? I get halfway down the page and I felt the room shift energetically. I felt it in the room. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, what was that? And another voice in my head said, Elizabeth, you're detoxing. You just imagined that. Right? You know, I just thought I'd got a little crazy, right? I didn't believe my senses, right? Then I felt my own pain start to dissipate. And I went, ooh, well, that's real. Like that, right? I know that's real, right? Anyway, I get to the bottom of the end of the prayer, and John says, and my pain level's, you know, down to a 2. And John says, what's everybody's pain level? And everybody's pain level was from an 8 to 0. And mine was sitting at a 2. And I'm sitting there with my science hat on because I had never seen anything like this. And I'm like, what just happened? Is this reproducible? Can you measure it? And does he teach it? I just went, we got to do research on this. You know, I went right in there. Anyway, so that's why I went and took the first training. It wasn't just, I saw that process work over and over and over and over again. I worked this every day somewhere on the planet, almost every day somewhere on the planet. And I took my first training in May of 2014. So, and I've been doing the process ever since. So anyway, that's some backup to it. Now, spiritual teachers tell us that we come into this life with the gifts and the burdens of our ancestors. And we know now that such things, we can see that on the epigenetic level. We're aware that, for instance, survivors of the Holocaust, their children and grandchildren carry the weight of the trauma that was experienced in that event, right? People that have been subject to slavery, you know, and then everything in between. It's, you know, big T trauma doesn't have to be little T trauma and big T trauma. There's really not all that much difference. It's just about how you carry it. So if you're carrying unresolved trauma in the system, that gets passed down as information into the next generation. And that's something that, you know, science has actually, you know, kind of measured in the last, I don't know what, 10 years. Mm-hmm. So this work helps us resolve, clear, release is a good word, release some of that burden. Now, what's interesting and what gets me because I have this training in research, basic research, is like, I want to know the mechanism. I want to know what exactly is the mechanism that makes this work. And we don't know that yet. And, you know, basic research, funds for basic research are kind of dried up. But anyway, I experienced the work myself, and I experienced others experiencing the work when I do it. So I've just, you know, we don't make claims about the work in terms of, oh, it'll heal this and that. We don't make those claims. We just bring the process and we see what happens. And it's pretty interesting what happens. So anyway, so what's the process? There's about 5 different techniques within the ancestral clearing, the trademark registered process that John Newton teaches. I can share one of them with you today on the podcast so that everyone could get a sense of it. They can have an experience of it. And
Yes.
yeah. So it's based on a couple of things. It's based on the person who's experiencing it being in the present moment.
Mhm.
And it's also what we're doing is we're accessing source energy. We're accessing the energy of the all that is, the whatever made this. Some people call it God, some people call it consciousness, some people call it the quantum field, whatever whatever this force is that created all of this that we're living in.
Mhm.
We're appealing to that. We're asking that energy to help us release the burdens that we carry. That's the process. And what I do as a practitioner is I hold the space and I kind of direct. I really kind of just hold the space between creator energy and the person that's receiving. And then the person that's receiving, all they have to do is be present. However, when people carry trauma,
Yeah.
some people that carry trauma, if it's unresolved in their system, they have difficulty being present. So this work, I've seen it work on people that are kind of dissociated. It just works differently. So it's very interesting. Anyway, so that's kind of an explanation of it. And I'd love to give you a sense of what it is if you'd like to hear. Yeah.
Yes, please.
So I'd like you to just put your attention on your body and stay present in the breath, and just let these words kind of wash over you. And I'll use the word creator for everyone, for you and for me and for everyone listening on replay. The replays is just as powerful as doing this live. So that's why it's fun to do on a podcast. Yeah. So we'll use infinite creator as our source name. And here we go. Infinite creator, all that you are, source of all that is, was and ever will be. We ask humbly and gratefully that you help everyone listening to this and all their relationships and all their ancestors and all their relationships through all relevant time, space, dimension, realms, lifetimes, and incarnations. For all the times they felt let down by life. For family, by family members, by relationships, by anyone representing the creator. And anytime they felt let down by the creator in any name or form. For any time they turned their back on their creator or believed the creator turned its back on them. Please help all of them to forgive each other, forgive themselves, be at peace with each other and at peace with themselves. Please and thank you. For all the times you weren't nurtured, loved, and supported or cherished, please help all of you to forgive each other and forgive yourselves. For all the times you didn't nurture, love, and support others in the ways that they needed. For any times you were out of integrity with another or another out of integrity with you. Please help all of you to forgive and release one another and forgive and release yourselves. Please and thank you. For all war, battle, Holocaust, genocide, persecution, slavery, injustice of any kind, all oppression, misuse of power, position, authority, politically, spiritually, medically, or in any other way. Please help everyone involved to forgive and release one another, no matter what happened. Please and thank you, please and thank you for all hurts and wrongs, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, sexual, financial, through thought, word, or action. All of you to another and another to all of you. Please help all of you to forgive one another and forgive yourselves. Please and thank you. Please and thank you. Please and thank you. Now take a breath in and let it out. And just notice how that feels in the body. Heat.
Hot.
Yeah, we call that the heat of the alchemy of transformation. It's like stuck energy in the body that's releasing.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes, definitely. And it was just so, like, just even listening to the whole thing, it was just so beautiful. I just feel so moved.
Oh, yeah. There you go. So everyone can just set for a moment and just, allow their body to feel. This is why we ask, this is why presence is so helpful in this process. Just allow the body to, because the body just released a whole bunch of stuff that it was holding on to.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So
That's great.
this is what I do every day.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's fun to work with people. Of course, my area of specialty, I work with all kinds of people, but my special
Right.
area is really chronic pain. And
Mhm.
man, is this a powerful process with chronic pain people. Is you can see why this is
Yeah.
when I get a new chronic pain client, because I'm like kind of like a coach. I work with doctors and nurses as a coach around whatever they're bringing to the table for a chronic pain sufferer, right?
Mhm.
And so you can imagine one of the first things that I do is bring this piece in.
Yeah.
We kind of start here, and then we start asking about can you sit still long enough to meditate and things like that, things to calm the mind.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, whoever will listen to this recording, I'm sure they're gonna feel as moved as I feel. And I really think it's super cool. I'm a science person too, just like you. And I love that there's a lot of uh, research and papers and articles about how we as individuals are affected by the things that had passed to our ancestors from generation to generation. And I think we live now in the really cool times where we can have access to all this science, all this proof. Is not no more a woo-woo thing, like, oh, that's crazy, or like, no, that doesn't work. I love that there's actual science behind this that show us how we do carry things from generation to generation.
I do too, and I have to say, when I was young, like really little, I asked my father, what's this? Where does the religious, at that point when I was really like 4 years old, it's religion. How
Mhm.
does the religious world uh, work with the real world? Like I saw that they were two different things, because I saw how people acted. They acted one way in church, and then they got in the parking lot and they just did this other thing, right? And I was like, how does this, where do these meet? And he kind of looked at me and said, you ask too many questions. And I remembered that, and I was like, wow. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, but I never, that's not an answer, Dad. But I never forgot the question. And
Yeah.
I learned to stop asking it because it irritated people. But I never stopped looking for the answer. And back in the probably early mid 90s, maybe about the mid 90s, or maybe later 90s, I was watching the like the Science Channel or the something like that, and
Mhm.
maybe Nature or something like that on PBS. And I saw them present. I saw them present quantum physics for the first time. I didn't know anything about that. And I was like, oh my God, this is where these two worlds meet. This is where science and spirituality meet, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I changed kind of my perspective by the time I got to be that age, but science, and they meet in the quantum field. And what does quantum physics tell us? Quantum physics tells us, spiritual people say, oh, we're all connected through consciousness. Yes, we are. Quantum physics tells us we're all not just connected, we're entangled and enmeshed in one another. And it's not just, when we're in the present moment, we're in the quantum field. So we're in the past, present, and future all at once. So we're not just entangled in one another in the present moment, we're entangled in one another in the past and the future.
Oh,
And That's the science part of why this works. So
Mhm.
when we clear somebody, when we do this clearing work on a certain person that's in the present, we clear the whole generation. The front and the back of the descendants and the ancestors. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. Um, so do you do have you ever done like a mom and a daughter in a I don't know in a grandma? Have you ever worked with actually a group of individuals that would like to heal themselves?
Um,
Maybe if not together, but like in sessions or something like that.
yeah, I'm just trying to think. As before COVID hit, I did a lot of group events. I'm not sure if we actually had 3 generations of the same family in the same group, but I had 2 generations. I've had that. And what we find, I love the question, it's an important question. What we find is, so I had a client last week who was, again, a chronic pain person,
Mhm.
new client, and she was talking about that she had ADD and her daughter had ADD, and she was very concerned about her daughter. And what we do from an ancestral clearing point of view is we clear what the mother's carrying about the daughter's ADD,
Mm.
because her, oh my God, my daughter's got ADD, that's the piece that's getting in the way. They both have this ADD thing, and yes, we would bring that in, but her worry about her daughter, we work with that too. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And when we clear the whatever the person is in front of us, her daughter and her mother would get, both of them, everybody would get cleared. That thing that we clear for her would clear for them. So the worry, if she's ready to let that go, and it serves the highest good for her to do that, and this process helps her do that, then she's not so hyper around her daughter, and that may help. And I know you as a nurse, you understand that, right?
Yeah, not a nurse. I'm a massage therapist, but when I work with the spine surgeons, I do a lot of their administrative paperwork and all that. And so I know like all the surgeries and everything that we do. That's exactly what we do. My mom, she's actually a retired nurse. So I've been in the medical field my whole life, pretty much. But
So
yeah, uh-huh.
so our attitude, again, you're speaking to the same phenomenon, really. We're all enmeshed.
Mhm.
So and everything's energy. So my worry, now I do a lot of clearing for worry, period. That's just so common in everybody's lineage, right?
Exactly.
Um, but that's an energy. And I'll give you an interesting example. My son, a long time ago, moved to Los Angeles. He's 40 now, but he moved to Los Angeles about 20 years ago.
Mm.
And this is before I was in this work. And I used to fret and worry. And and he called me one day and he said, Mom, could you please imagine me thriving instead of, having a problem here, right? Getting in an accident or whatever,
Yeah.
instead of being like this, could you just send me thriving energy? And I was like, my God, that's brilliant. It never occurred to me, because I was used to being around people that worried. That's what people in my family did. I had a
Mm.
stepmother that just worried about everybody. Right?
Yeah.
And that was my model. Or
Mhm.
my model was so anyway. So I thought it was so brilliant, and I said, yes, I can do that. And I had to do some inner work to
Mhm.
release the old habit, right, of worrying. But it completely changed um, my world, right, and it changed his. And why? Because we're all entangled and we
Mhm.
can feel each other, right? So what are we putting out into the field of consciousness? Are we putting out worry energy? Because it makes us sick, and stresses us out and kicks our cortisol levels up and, messes with our sleep and so forth. But what's it doing to the rest of the world, right?
Exactly. How do you go about, we try to, there's certain individuals, I guess even myself, I always try to do the work, try to release, try to heal. What happens when one heals and the other generation is still stuck in their own ways, their own traumas, and they're not like letting go, like in this case, like it could be like my aunt or my grandmother or my mom. Well, by me releasing and healing ancestral trauma, I guess we'll call it that way, will I be helping them by me healing, or will each individual has to do their own work within?
It's a great answer. Great question. And the answer is it depends. I have seen, we do see in this practice then, for instance, when I just go back to the example of the daughter with ADD and the mother,
Right.
those are both, ADD is a symptom of trauma, right? It's a trauma response. It's considered by trauma specialists to be a trauma response. So
Wow.
underneath that is trauma. So it'll be interesting to some, and I've got a special, a focused practice that I'm going to teach this client to work on her kid to help her calm down. And I'll teach them some practices to just kind of, calm the body, because they're dysregulated. So they need some tools to help the vagus nerve, regulate again. They need tools to get themselves regulated. That's my job, right? So ancestral clearing is a piece, but it's not necessarily the only piece. And so this is why I do what I do. I do ancestral clearing, and I bring in yoga, this trauma-informed yoga, which is a polyvagal theory. It's got a lot of all that information around trauma training. I bring that into my yoga class, and so I specialize in working with chronic pain, people that suffer from chronic pain. I specialize in that kind of yoga. I bring them trauma-informed yoga so that they can move their bodies and help start to exercise the body in a gentle way and start moving some of this energy out of the body. And I bring in ancestral clearing. So it kind of depends on the person. That's why I say it depends. It depends on the person. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So people have to be ready to, they have to be willing to release too. And I find in the chronic pain phenomenon that people can get very attached to it's almost like a comfort zone because they've had it for so long. They don't know how to let it go. And of course, that's part of my job as in the chronic pain field, is to help people, work with that. This is, can you let it go? So that's a part of, if they're holding on, I've had people that come into, group events for an ancestral clearing group event, that come in and this is their energy. You can't help me no matter what you do. And I still run the process and they get help, but they don't get as much help because they're doing this. So
they're still resisting to their own
selves. Yeah. And that's unfortunately that can be an effect of the chronic pain phenomenon. That negativity. Sure.
Yeah. Do you think also, I know, what's your take? There's some people that says that we get some certain body pains and aches in different places of our body because of our traumas.
Well, in ancestral clearing, there's kind of a basic, when John Newton does the training, you can have practitioner training and he goes through this. There's kind of a basics map, a basics kind of skeletal map kind of that we start with. And we just noticed he's been doing this process for over 30 years and he's noticed a pattern. It's similar to Louise Hay's Heal Your Body model, but it's not the same. And his is tweaked from his own experience, and I find it to be, and I've looked at other models that have kind of maps of the body about where certain things are held, and John's model, it seems to be quite accurate. Again, it'd be really cool to do a scientific study on it. You know, that's just my researcher part of personality. Would love to do that. And the other thing I was going to say is we're also kind of open to, again, remember the ancestral clearing is a really conversation between source and the person. And so we have this kind of general, this area, like this area on the left, right at the trapezius here. That's female, where blame, judgment, and misunderstanding sits, for example, right? And so we would kind of start there. If somebody had a pain here, we would start there. But also, as a practitioner, I'm sitting in this place of stillness, and I'm holding space between source energy and the client. And that's an information-rich field. So where we start with blaming, being blamed and judged and misunderstood by women, or women in the lineage judging, blaming and misunderstanding others, that kind of thing. But also there's other information in this field of consciousness in the present moment. And so we apply that as well.
That is amazing. I love that. And does this feels a little bit also like Reiki, do you think? Because I know it's like some sort of like energy work. And I know so even like what you just said earlier, the when you read the little paragraph, it just has such a high level of energy that it almost brings you to that, right? Is it similar? Is it a little bit maybe around that, where
the way I would answer that question is, again, maybe, right?
Okay.
It depends. I'm not a Reiki master. However, my stepsister was very familiar with Reiki, and she asked me to do a massage on her a few years ago, and I did, and I just kind of I do something I just do massage my way. I have kind of I'm kind of tuned into the body, and I kind of use my hands, and I didn't realize I was doing Reiki. She said, well, when did you learn Reiki? And I'm like, I didn't. You know, she said, you're doing Reiki. And I'm like, as far as I understand, Reiki is like some actual very specific hand movements. The only specific hand movements that I do are more related to yoga and mudras, which are also very powerful, but not Reiki. So my answer there is we're not doing Reiki, but we're working in the same field of consciousness that Reiki works in, and like that everybody's working in. All healing people are working in this field. And it's just a matter of like, how, excuse me, how are we working with the energy? That's all. It's just a different way of working with the energy. It's all the same energy. We're just working with it differently.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you incorporate these yoga training with your clients. Do you do, what, can you explain us a little bit how this yoga is different from the regular yoga that we might be doing every morning?
Sure. Yeah. At trauma-informed yoga, well, when I learned yoga in a class, when I learned yoga, I learned it from a private yoga teacher, because I was when my back was messed up and I couldn't handle it. So I had this private thing. But when I got out of the pain management program,
Mhm.
I was up and running and I could be in a regular class. And in a regular class, I would hear things like keep up. And so the teacher's setting a bar and you're supposed to meet it, right? We don't do that in a trauma-informed class.
Right.
Where we say the teacher sets the standard for what we're going for, but you meet yourself where you are.
Mm.
You don't have to push yourself. And the first trauma-informed class that I went into, because my tendency is to, you set a bar, I'm going to go higher. that's my, that's just kind of part of my older personality before I cleared that
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
And when I first sat in front of, and I've been in a bunch of yoga class where I felt pushed and I was like, I can't, this is make me go back into chronic pain. I'm not going to push myself at that level, right? I'm just
Yeah.
like trying to heal here. And and the teacher says, meet yourself where you are. This is your practice. And I burst into tears because I felt like I'd been seen and heard by this person, didn't even know me. I was like, what a relief. Right. So we always have a choice. In a trauma-informed class, you give agency, because when that person experienced trauma, they didn't have a choice. And you're making sure that they have one at all times. So you're creating a safe space.
I see.
Another thing is we're careful with the cadence and the words to make them melodic and kind of sing-songy, but not like a directive. I don't teach the class as a directive. It's more like it's an invitation. If you feel to do so, move this way. And we don't use the word. I see this in a regular class. If somebody can't do a pose in a certain way, the teacher will say, well, you can modify it like this. I don't do that. I say, here's a variation, which is different. Modification means, oh, there's a perfect, and then there's the modification, which is less than perfect. We don't do that. Everything is valid. All variations are valid, right? So we're coming from a little different aspect, and we're coming with a soft touch, and then there's one other thing I can say, and then you can ask a question, of course, is we don't put students one in front of the other. We put them in a circle so they don't have to worry about what's behind them. Another thing to help them feel safe, right? We're always trying to keep the environment so that they feel utterly safe.
Right. And besides that, do you guys also do the traditional poses, or is there specific ways that you guys move to release trauma, or whatever decision that you're doing?
Yeah, we don't do breath holds, for instance. We wouldn't hold the breath. There's a lot of, in the yoga that I teach, Kundalini, Hatha, all the movements of Hatha yoga are within Kundalini style yoga. But I do it from a trauma-informed space. And part of that is breath work. Like, you don't move one way or the other in Kundalini yoga, whether breathing one way or the other. We never, ever hold the breath, not on the inhale or the exhale, because that mimics a fight or flight. It can, right? It's when people get frightened, they hold their breath. So we're not mimicking any of that. It's a rounded breath. So we're very cautious of that. And then as far as what particular position we put people in, it depends on who's in the class and what their capabilities are. Yeah. For instance, I can't do, for those of the listeners that are yoga people, yoga enthusiasts, I broke my wrist a while back, and I can't do down dog without straining that wrist anatomically. So I do wall dog. So I'll do down dog on the wall where the angle is not as, there's not as much weight and the angle is less. So that's my variation. And so I actually, as a teacher, I don't teach down dog. per se, because I can't actually do it. So I just skip that. It's okay. We still have a beautiful class and people they help release. I just don't use that particular asana, right? That pose, for instance.
Yeah, that's awesome. And because I've never heard of the particular name for yoga, but it seems to me like it's pretty similar to what everyone is doing, but it's in a more almost like in a more loving way to guide the people that's going through some certain situation, or in this case, people with chronic pain.
Yes, and when we go slower, so that the
Um,
body has, so that it's a lot to process. There's
yeah,
there can be a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of moving parts in the yoga class. And I like to keep it simple and calm and slow and not rushed, because part of chronic pain is we're rushing. We have an argument with the present moment in chronic pain because we don't like it. We're at war with chronic, we're at war with pain. Just let's face it, that's the elephant in the room. We're at war with pain. And part of healing from chronic pain is coming to the peace table and not being at war with it, and understanding that pain is part of healing.
yeah,
The more I had an attitude about, I want to get rid of this pain, the worse my pain got. Dr. Peter said the first day I got in there, into his pain track, he says, and they've got a room full of chronic pain patients. He says, "What are you doing to contribute to your pain?" And I was like, "Are you trying to get yourself killed? You're in a room full of people, and they're not going to be happy with this question, right? Yeah, I know you know what I'm talking about. I didn't say anything. I thought it. I didn't say it."
yeah,
Because I knew he had the room. And anyway, within about 3 more sentences, I realized he was talking about me judging my pain.
yeah.
He said, "Don't judge the moment." I'm like, I'm not judging anything, and the pain's doing it to me. And so very victim-y mode. And I had no idea that I had any power in that space at all. And when he asked that question, "What are you doing to contribute to your pain?" You know what he did? He took me from a place of victimhood to a place of empowerment. And that's a strong place for anyone to be in the face of chronic pain.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Mm-hmm. We get too hung up on the problem,
Yes,
not knowing that we're making it worse.
that's right. You said it perfectly.
Wow, that's a great thing to just keep in mind, just as an awareness. Going back to the ancestral healing, is there something that I know you guide all these individuals that come to you for assistance and all that, but is there something that anyone can do in their house to start the process and just start that release of any
Yes.
struggles that
Well,
they
I
go
can
through?
give you the basic formula for the prayer that we used. And then you could kind of put in there what seems right for you. And then if you email me through my website, I give out the comprehensive forgiveness prayer that John Newton gives out. I give it out too. So I'm happy to do that. That's a place to start, but I'll give you the basic ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
The basic ingredient is creator, like whatever whoever you're addressing. It could be God, creator, consciousness, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want to call it. And then it's whatever you want to forgive about, which is forgiving means in this context means, please help me release this thing I'm carrying.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it means. We're offering it up to this creator energy. So creator, what we're forgiving about, and then gratitude and humility, please and thank you. That's the formula. And you can, that's where I would start. That's where I started. I started with his forgiveness prayer, and the comprehensive forgiveness prayer that he gives away and I give away was the one that he brought into Pain Track that day, the pain management program, and
Mm.
it blew us all away in the room. It just, I'm still astonished at that. As the first time I ever was experienced this that was over 8 years ago, and I'm still kind of like, wow, that was amazing.
Yeah, I think even those words, please and thank you, just bring such a powerful energy. I heard someone one day said that how important it is for everybody to just be grateful and be thankful for the things that we have, right? Just even acknowledging things that you're grateful for will raise your energetically feel and levels, which is so simple, because I know life is life and we go through things. Life is not just happy all day long. So, but doing even little things like that, it really raised your energy levels in an instant. So I think it's great, and he's definitely a genius. This doctor, yeah, for sure. That was really, really awesome. I know you have shared a lot of things about ancestral healing and what you do with the yoga trauma modalities too. Is there any other stuff that you would like to share with us before
I
we
would.
finish?
I'd like to say
Yeah.
that the greatest healer lives inside of each of us.
Mm.
Greatest healer lives inside of you. Doctors can stitch up a wound and set a bone, but they can't
Mm.
tell the body how to heal. They can
Right.
give us optimal, all the healthcare workers can give us optimal, the orders, like these are the optimal, these are the things I want you to do to set up the optimal conditions for healing, but can't tell the body how to heal. So, really understanding that intelligence lives in every cell in the body, and and that our job is to follow the orders of the suggestions, the the knowledge that the healthcare workers give us. We follow that to the best of our ability and follow our inner knowing, and then get out of the way and let the body heal, right? And that includes relenting complaint. That includes stop complaining, be grateful. That's a big piece of it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So getting out of the way, what are we doing to contribute to our pain again? Getting to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
That's what
that's
I
the
do.
question of today's.
There you go.
That's awesome. That's amazing. And if anyone wants to get in contact with you, get a session, or just talk to you, where can they find you?
Yes, you can find me at Elizabeth-Kipp.com. You got to put the dash in there between Elizabeth and Kipp. That's KIPP. ElizabethKipp.com is a web designer and a photographer, and she's amazing, but she's not me. So
I
if
love that.
you go there, you're at the wrong place. Elizabeth-Kipp.com. You can, there's a lot of free information there on my blog. I have a store. You can sign up for a session. You can email me through that, contact me through there, and I'd be glad to talk to you.
Awesome. I will put all her information in the show notes too. And if you guys would like to know more about my podcast, you guys know you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And also, if you haven't grabbed a copy of my book, you can find it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. It's called Parents Are Greatest Teachers. Leave me a review if you like, give it a like. And thank you everyone for being here today. It was such an awesome conversation. Have a blessed day, everyone. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Alex.